Hi, I'm Lauren, a mom, former teacher turned children's book author, and your host who joins special guests each episode as we share our top kid-lit picks for sparking hard conversations the easy way. Yep, that means everything from tackling bullying and out-of-control anger to celebrating diversity, inclusion, and leading with kindness, plus so much more. My whole mission of my own children's book series, Blooming Rose, is to provide social and emotional support tools for in and out of the classroom, and this podcast is my way to expand that mission even further. So stay tuned as we dive into this week's topic on the Blooming Books podcast. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Blooming Books podcast. Our guest today is here to shed light on a very prevalent topic in our schools and in our homes. She has an extensive background in speech language pathology and is a preschool director and early childhood educator, where she honed in on her desire to empower students with tools to sharpen their executive functioning skills, and now owns her own private coaching academy here in the Houston area. So without further ado, Ms. Robyn Dalberg, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. This is so fun.
Okay, so before we dive into that deep brain talk and really have to focus, I like to start with some rapid fire questions to get to know you a little bit better. So are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you mentioned that your family relocated to the Houston area some years ago. And what has been the most surprising or pleasant Texan tradition that you've adopted as a family or for yourself?
Oh, so fun. So actually, we've just been about a year and a half. So
pretty
there
new.
are so many traditions here. Yes. So I still feel pretty new after getting everybody settled and getting started with the business. And there are definitely some traditions I'm looking forward to. I've yet to be to a rodeo or a nutcracker market. But we sort of brought our old favorites with us, and we've really enjoyed exploring the theater district. We've been to a number of fantastic shows downtown. We've visited the Hill Country, and comparing Houston and Austin barbecue is kind of fun. We've enjoyed the beach at Galveston, but as far as like, are we loving Dr. Pepper over Barks root beer? Not so much yet. I know.
Where did you guys move from?
So the Seattle area.
Okay. And do y'all have Barks in Seattle?
We did.
You do? Because I'm from Louisiana.
It was my fast food guilty pleasure. I don't really drink soda. And that was like, ooh, I need some fries and root beer.
Yes, because I'm from Louisiana, and I thought Barks was a Louisiana thing. Maybe I don't know where it originated from, but yes, you definitely have to love Dr. Pepper here in Texas. But yeah, Barks is the best though. I like Barks too. Okay, so number two, where was the last vacation that you ventured to?
Oh, actually, my husband and I spent a week over in Longboat Key, Florida, celebrating our 30th anniversary this summer.
Oh, that is so nice. So where is that in Florida?
So it is on the Gulf side, about midway through the state. So people know where Sarasota is. So near there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we did a lot in the panhandle of Florida, but not so much the rest. But yeah, it's all gorgeous. I mean, it's so much waterway over there. You can't go wrong.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, and number three, what is your favorite way to self-regulate as an adult? Which we'll get into for kids, but it's important for adults too.
It's important for adults to help the children and for ourselves. So for me, I just feel like we are bombarded constantly with information from too many places, and the noise gets to be much. So my favorite is my backyard. I love to just sit out and listen to the waterfall in the pool, but outside, even if I just need to go walk around the block or go grab the mail, when I'm starting to feel all the feels, just a little bit of time outside is the best thing for me.
Yeah, even though it's a little bit warmer down here than Washington. My brother lives up there, and it feels like fall all the time.
But I love this weather.
I think sweating, isn't that good? Like getting those toxins out, getting a little sweat going. That must be good for the nervous system too, right?
Yes, I think so. It works for me.
So I'm so happy to be tackling this topic. We'll probably just scratch the surface because, of course, a lot of these episodes I could ramble on and on for days about. But you see it everywhere in education, in homes, into adulthood even. But today we'll be getting into the nitty gritty of focus and attention struggles, from ADD and ADHD to overall executive functioning skills to tools and, of course, books that may help. And just a quick disclaimer, I'm not a physician, and if you suspect your child might need some help, please consult your medical provider. Okay, so you now have your own practice as an executive functioning coach. So, can we just start at the beginning, back that up, and can you tell us a little bit about what the executive functioning area of your brain is responsible for and what kinds of challenges you see as a coach on a routine basis?
Absolutely. So, in simple terms, the executive functioning area of our brain is really responsible for helping us get stuff done.
Mhm.
And it is located up in the front of our brain, which is the last part of our brain to develop. So there's a lot of challenges that I see. I work with students, and obviously their brains are not fully developed yet. So sometimes their struggles are really just developmental readiness. They're just not there yet. And sometimes in schools, that's a problem because it's just expected. If one kid can do it, they all should be able to do it. And that's
Mhm.
not really the case. Um, I think it's important to keep in mind that there are different types of executive functions. And without taking too deep of a dive, I think people want to know that there are foundational skills and then there's a higher level skill. So, up in this front of your brain really are the higher level cognitive skills that help us get those things done. But we need to make sure that children have their foundational skills developed first, like inhibitory control and cognitive flexibility and working memory. And often the struggles I see come from what's visible to people at school. Poor planning, poor organization, those backpacks and lockers and lunch boxes are a mess. Kiddos aren't starting their homework on time or at all, or they're finishing it and not turning it in. So it's often not until students are in school, middle school is a brick wall, kids hit, and parents are like, they've been doing fine. I don't understand. And middle school is kind of the first aha moment where people are noticing the struggles that their kids are having because they're only 11 years old
Mhm.
and we're asking them to do something most adults can't do. We go to one job most often with one boss and one email. These kids are expected to work with 6 to 8 teachers, with all of each class having their own portal. Within each portal, there are apps that they have to be able to access. Sometimes they turn things in person, sometimes online. They're 11. They've
Yeah,
had one teacher their whole life.
that's stressing
It's
me
a
out.
big ask, and I don't think that developmentally people realize how hard that really is. So the struggles that I see are being able to handle all of that and just complete and utter overwhelm. And my middle school students are pretty open to giving it a try just because they're still in that happy-go-lucky learning mode. Late middle school, early high school, they really start to shut down. And so that's the other struggle that I see is parents start to panic because their kids really just aren't doing. And it's not a choice. They are
Yeah.
not intentionally procrastinating. They are not intentionally ignoring. They are completely overwhelmed from the inside out.
Yeah. And you see that with reading too, like, because, my background is with like second grade. And if they're, struggling with reading, like, yeah, at first they're happy and everyone's learning. And then once you start to see those gaps coming in or those struggles coming in, they get less and less motivated to, keep working at it, or they have less and less tools available, less strategies, less support to help them, and they just keep falling further behind. Um,
Yes.
and that really reminds me of that when you're talking about, even in fourth grade, my daughter's fifth grade now, and even with fourth grade last year, and it kind of depends how your schools are set up. That was like their jump, to the middle school building. And there's a lot. And of course, your fourth grade teachers want to prepare you for fifth grade and fifth grade for sixth grade. And, so they say, this is what we're trying to prepare you for in the future. But it kind of went from, third grade, I'm sitting down with them. My son's in first grade. We sit down, we do homework together. I'm helping him keep track. And then once they make that jump, like they're supposed to keep track of all of that stuff on their own. They're supposed to be writing it down in their planners. And, I asked her, I'm like, I don't know what you have for homework. You tell me what you have for homework, whereas in third grade, it'll be listed out and, things like that. And it is a really big jump just from organizational wise to keep their stuff track. Like now she's dressing out for PE and she's been leaving her uniform in the locker room and, And so it's like just new routines on how to keep track of everything, how to, bring stuff home that you need for homework because the teachers aren't telling you, okay, make sure you have this page and this book and this, like they have to be responsible for so much at a young age. And I
Agreed.
can definitely see how, it gets to be a muddy area of like, okay, is my kid really struggling with this, or is it just very high expectations, and are a lot of other kids struggling with this? Like, so it becomes a hard line for parents to know um, when I guess it's becoming a problem or when it's just, we need something that we need to practice more on.
Absolutely. My gut would say if you see a struggle,
Hmm.
just support it. Not to not have expectations of your children and lead them towards independence, but give them the little bit of support that they need. Their brain really is still developing. And we were there for them when they were younger. They're still young.
Yeah.
All the way through high school, they're still young, they're still growing. And if you can start to break things down and help review or give declarative wording reminders, right? Like not always telling them what to do, but noticing or observing in a
Yes.
curious way to get them to start thinking that way. Um, no harm can come from that.
Because as
Um,
parents, I mean, we want to jump in and we want to make
oh,
sure, like,
yes.
I don't want to be running out the door late. I want to make sure you have your stuff ready to go the night before. And she did the other night. It was 9 o'clock. We're trying to be in bed for 9 o'clock, getting ready for bed at 8:30. And here it is, 9 o'clock. And she's like, Mom, you're going to be mad at me, but I don't have my volleyball bag. I don't have my lunch kit. Like she forgot him at school and from Friday.
Oh,
And we didn't realize that until, Sunday night. And
yeah.
I was like, okay. I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, I could blow up right now because, it's
Mhm.
late and I'm stressed and, but I said, it's okay. I said, come to me. We'll work it out. But this, you need to go, tomorrow and make sure you gather all your stuff. And so she did. But it's hard for parents to say, okay, how do I step back and let them figure things out on their own versus when to step in when they need extra support? And so it's a fine
Absolutely.
line. And I feel like, that middle school grade, it's such a in-between phase, like that messy middle phase of becoming independent young adults from, little elementary kiddos. And I guess every kid is different though. And you just have to, as a parent, go off of their cues what they need.
Absolutely. And I think like what you did, walking her through and holding her hand to make sure she went and did it versus doing it for her is critical. And I think middle school is, I don't know what people call low stakes, right? It's a
Hmm.
good time for them to make mistakes and do some learning. And it's a hard time because you see other kids not struggling. They're struggling, you just don't see it. So everybody is unique, like you've said over and over. So letting them struggle a little bit is a
Yeah.
good thing, but keeping in mind the best support is being curious with them and, prompting them with asking them questions about what they think they could do to make things better. Not, hey, can I help you write that in your planner for you? That's what we want to do. We just want
Yeah.
to be like, here, let me do it for you. But hey, what could you do to make sure you remember? Right. And then like a call to teachers who are so busy and trying so hard, like never knocking no matter what comes out of my mouth if it sounds wrong. Super value the teachers.
Yes.
Um, but giving kids time to write down the homework. Um, there's so many different things going on in the little kids that are in these classrooms, and it's hard to accommodate each and every one, but time never fails. Um, if you hand them a planner in third grade and start teaching them how to use a planner, that's not going to look the same in sixth grade or in 10th grade. In third grade, fourth grade is usually when kids get introduced to a planner. They
Yeah.
can't just be taught for 2 weeks and then expected to manage that on their own. And when teachers are teaching up to the bell, kids aren't going to get their planner out and write things down. They really need a chunk of time at the end of the day to close down the
Decompress.
teacher
Yeah.
learning and say, here, get your planners out, write your homework down. And they need it longer than you think they need it.
Yeah.
So a request for that one piece, because it's a huge struggle from school to home. What's your homework? Where's your homework? Where are we going to find your homework? Why don't you know what you have for homework? Why do you keep telling me you have no homework? They always have something, right?
Yeah.
They just need a little time between that shuffle. Anxious kids want to get to the next class so they're not late. Kids with slow processing are taking longer to pack it up and realize everyone's even moving. So there's something different for everyone, but a little bit of time at the end of that class can change the entire rest of their day.
Yeah, that's so true. So I know focus issues and attention spans are compound and often complex web of symptoms and, stem from many different causes potentially. But even in my own household, it's something I've done a lot of research on to make sure I'm helping and supporting my kids the best I can. And, like we said, every kid is different. I've got two kids and they're both vastly different. Um, do you think recent generations have seen an increase in ADD and ADHD diagnoses, or is it something in the water, or is it just that we're more aware and we can identify them more now?
You know what? That's a great question. It's really thoughtful. And of course, what I hear a
It's
lot,
the
but
water, right?
it's right. Like, of course, it's not in the water, but it's a combination of a number of
Right.
things. So, on one hand, awareness has grown.
Hmm.
So, teachers and parents and doctors are better at recognizing the signs, um, especially in groups that were overlooked, right? You're worried about your daughter. Girls typically present differently than boys. That's not to say that it's not vice versa for them as well. But then I don't know, like I was saying, on the other hand, life today, like we just are placing such heavier demands on our executive function. We just have so much coming in at one time from so many different places. Um, so our organizing and time management, all of that just feels bigger and more noticeable in schools. But whether or not the number of diagnoses have gone up or not, I don't actually have a good number
Hmm.
to share with you research wise. I think it reflects sort of our improved understanding, right? Brain science is amazing and growing at such a rapid pace that we really are just learning more about the real differences of an ADHD brain versus what's being considered a neurotypical brain. There are biological differences. There is less myelinization. There is less white matter in the brain. It's a literal shape difference.
Yeah.
And it's got a genetic component to it. So I don't think the goal is like necessarily overdiagnosing, but just making sure that people who are struggling aren't dismissed no matter what the reason is. And it's not that they're lazy or broken and need to be fixed. We just want to be able to support people in accessing being successful.
Yeah. Because even in my, research that I've done with podcasts and things like that, it's, I learned that there's 7 different types of ADD, I guess in addition to ADHD. Uh, and when you can really think about, and of course it presents differently, like you said, in boys versus girls, or, from person to person, it's different. And it's more about understanding what that might look like. And for me as a mom or as a partner, being able to grant grace
Yeah,
and a little bit more patience, because
absolutely.
I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I'm, have anxiety, I'm like OCD about some things. And it's like, why don't y'all, am I the only one that sees this mess? Am I the only one that notices this? Am I the only
Mhm.
one that notices this? And it's like, they're not trying to be, like you said, lazy and disrespectful. They're
Yeah.
just literally having to turn off, certain areas from overstimulation, or, they get distracted by, their hyper focus on one thing. And of course, that is going to have a lag in other areas. Um,
Sure.
so I think the more that we just can learn and understand about it, and I think we've been doing more of that in this generation of parenting. Even growing up, I didn't know anybody else's diagnosis or kids that have this or even autism or, but I feel like as a generation of parents, we are becoming more proactive. We're becoming more curious. We are taking things into our own hands as far as going and learning about these things and looking for tools, looking for books, looking for strategies, looking for extra help. Because it's not just like, oh, shake it off, you're fine, keep going, or oh, you're lazy, get up and keep doing this, like as our parents told us, because we just didn't know. I feel like we just didn't talk and know about it. And that's SEL as a whole umbrella too, not just all these topics we talk about on the podcast is like, let me actually take a minute to think about self-regulation or to think about, attention goals and, things like that, that I just feel like maybe they didn't talk about in generations before.
Absolutely. And again, that goes to that awareness. And I think to a point that may be frustrating for parents is when they finally do bring their concerns to somebody or to a professional, and then they're not getting the answers they want right away. I think it's sort of important to point out that professionals are being careful, right? They're not looking to rush into a diagnosis because the right diagnosis makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there are fine lines or overlaps. And if you pick one over the other, it might mean different interventions, which might not be the best for your child or your student. So remembering that just because you have a child that's super active or distractible doesn't mean it's ADHD. And so their professionals are going to be looking at their developmental history and parental and teacher observations. And you want to make sure that the concerns are happening in multiple environments. So sometimes your kiddo is just a tired kiddo and comes home and gives mama all the grief, right? But they're doing great at school. They do fine at daycare. They never give grandma any grief. Like kids that have a difference that is a deficit or is impairing their quality of life, it's going to be happening in more
Across
than one
the board.
place.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a lot of good. So that kind of leads into my next question, as I've heard a lot of concerns from friends, family, and fellow parents surrounding seeing their children struggling in school with homework, whether it's transitional times, even engaging socially. But I also see a lot of hesitation for, jumping into those official evaluations and medications. So do you think there are like diet and lifestyle recommendations to implement as like a good starting point? Like you said, like kind of maybe, go down this path before moving on to the next step?
Yes. Okay. So that's a great question because really it's showing that parents and teachers, we really want to be looking at what you can do on the day to day.
Mm-hmm.
So the short answer is yes, right? Like
Okay,
diet
good.
and lifestyle will absolutely make a difference, but it's important to remember that they're part of a bigger picture. So we know that basics like sleep and exercise and basic nutrition can really support brain function. And for some kids, maybe reducing excessive sugar or processed foods can help with energy and focus, but ADHD is not caused by diet.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually like to tell families that the lifestyle strategies are sort of a foundation. So if ADHD is in the picture and you layer it with specific strategies and maybe you need medical treatment, it's going to be different for everybody, but laying that foundation of good sleep and outdoor play and consistent structure, absolutely, that's going to be beneficial.
Yeah, because it almost is like, what other supports you may need, it's just going to
Mhm.
help, supplement those to, be more effective than if you're like having opposing forces where your kid's tired, your kid is zonked out on sugar, or your kid hasn't gotten up and run around and has energy, or it's kind of like after they get home from school, it's like, okay, here's your homework. Well,
Mhm.
you're probably going to have a meltdown after school if they're tired and they're hungry and they haven't been able to go run around and play that much. Like, let them go, burn all that off, have a snack, and then come back, and you'll probably have, better results from getting through that homework struggle.
For sure. One of the things I do with kids is kind of talk about the tools. Like if they're having a hard time getting started, we
Mhm.
kind of talk about the different tools that they have. And ADHD treatment is not a one size fits all, right? So starting
Right.
with those healthy routines is always the safe and effective first step, but it's also a good tool for parents when they're trying to decide, is this issue a significant difference that I should be concerned about?
Right.
And like you just said, check, oh, we haven't run around today. This is maybe not an issue. We need to start moving our
Yeah.
body. Oh, when was the last time he had some protein, right? Like let's get him some food before we go on. So it's a little bit like a checklist, right? A healthy routine is a great foundation and a little bit of a sparker of thoughts, right? To make you think, where is it that we might have missed one of our tools in place and what can we do to get back on track?
Yeah. That's true, because it really, I feel like it can help you pinpoint um, deeper issues. Like
Yeah.
if you cover your bases and then we're still having some struggles, then what else can we do? Kind of build upon that. So,
Yes.
again, we always recommend talking to your child's doctor for any concerns. But are there any like hidden symptoms that, as a expert, it gets flagged in your mind when you see a child struggling with something, but the parent, we might not realize it could even be related to, like, say, a focus issue or executive functioning issue, um, that we could also be looking out for.
I think absolutely. I think those quieter struggles kind of fly under the radar, right? Like the classic signs of being hyper and distracted are super visual
Mm-hmm.
and occasionally annoying to grown-ups. So they're very in your face. Um, but kids who you look at and the words like lazy or disinterested pop into your head, I think that's a spot to pause and reflect on what else is going on. Because often that can be somebody who's struggling with task initiation, um, or your kiddos who are losing things, or those big emotions, right? The things that you're like, why are we freaking out about this? This is so not a big deal. And obviously it is a big deal to them, but sometimes it's just the path that it's taking, that's harder for them to end up regulating. And that lack of emotional regulation really is a good cue and a good sign to think, this
Yeah.
might be something else if it's on the regular, right? Not if it's about the extra special thing. And again, the toolbox checking, right? Have they
Yeah.
been fed? Has this been going on? If it's something that's ongoing, um, they're not needy kids. They're not kids with character flaws. There's probably something else going on. Really, as young as your little preschoolers. I have one little guy who's part of my why, but super excited all the days long waiting for our preschool hayride. And we got up on the hayride and it was meltdown crazy. And so we were in a position for me to say, let's go and let my staff take the rest of the kids. And when we got off, he just was so upset. And I was able to just step back and look at him and literally just say, what's up? He stopped and he told me what was up. And we went on our day and had a lovely morning waiting for the kids to
Yeah.
come back. At that little age, at 3 years old, he just needed to be heard. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it seems silly, but because he wasn't, and he didn't know how to get attention in the right way because he's still growing and developing and he was frustrated, it turned into something much bigger. So sometimes just taking that pause and giving somebody a chance to
Yeah.
say what they're trying to get at.
I feel like, especially with littles, like they'll get hung up on one little thing. Like if my
Mhm.
son's trying to tell me something and I might jump to what I think he's trying to tell me, like he insists on going, like, no, no, no. But like, he's hung up. So I have to like let him get his full thought out, because sometimes they can't just move on and kind of forget about it. They have to have, that expression to get through it. So that's a good point too. So like we said, at the end of the day, they're tired, they're hungry, you're stressed, and bam, it's time for homework. So, because as an academic coach, what are your top three study tips for helping our students get through it with less tears on their part, on our part, on everyone's part? Like when, where, how should we be approaching homework?
Outstanding question. Okay, so let's see how I can answer this succinctly. Let's put the top three tips into when, where, and how.
Okay.
So if you kind of structure things around that, so a consistent time for homework every day is really helpful. And it's ideally when those kiddos have fuel in their tank, right? You were
Hmm.
mentioning when they get home from school, it's not
They're
happening for
empty.
your kiddos,
Yeah.
right? So definitely a little snack or a short break, because having that consistent time helps your brain work better with the energy and the predictability. But again, that's different for everybody, right? Some kids just are in the zone and want to do it right away and then have their time. So you have to kind of figure out who your kiddo is and what their needs are. But working within a consistent time frame is a really important piece. And then where. And this is a thing I do a lot with my coaching clients because where is hard. We're
Yeah.
families. The dining room table is often the place, but sometimes kids want to study everywhere. And I think anywhere, not the bed, is really an okay place.
Yeah.
Some
Or
folks are
standing
even
up.
saying, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, for sure. But having sort of a designated study spot or a sacred study zone, somewhere where it's calm, it's uncluttered, like not all Pinteresty perfect, but it should send the message that like this is where work gets done. And you have things within reach, right? Or you have a setup routine that allows for homework to get done here.
Yeah.
So maybe before they take their break, they dump their backpack, they make sure there's a water bottle there, and they have two sharp pencils, right? So everything is there. So when they come back, homework is ready. It's time to work. And then the how, that's always the hard part, right? Like, oh, what are we going to do? Often everything feels too big. So looking at what the homework is and breaking it into smaller, doable chunks. And I'm going to be honest, like you don't necessarily want your little kids using AI, or you want to monitor your older kids who are learning about it. But if as a parent, you're stuck with how do I break this down even smaller, right? You can only task analyze so far down. Use your AI. Hey, AI, I'm working with my second grader on Math Mountains or whatever they do in school now. I don't even know. Please help me break these down into smaller chunks. Please give me an example of this that relates to real life for a second grader. Please help me have a fun example after this problem. And if you put the problems in, it will give you the questions you need to help prompt your child into breaking it down so they can start learning that problem solving on their own because it all feels too big.
Yeah.
And again, you might not need that AI support at second grade, but I wanted to just say, like, sometimes what they're doing at school doesn't make sense to you at home. And that's a good place to go get the support to know how to support your kiddo, not to get the answers to the homework.
Yeah.
So the smaller chunks, allowing breaks. Your brain really, I don't want to even say this fact. I feel embarrassed. I can't recall it right now, but 1 minute per year of age, right? So your second graders really are going to have about 8 minutes where they can give you 100%. They probably can work for longer than that. But if you want to talk about like, let's give 100% to what we're doing, give them 8 minutes and then have that drink of water, get up, come back, do 10 jumping jacks, take a little break and then come back. And I think teaching that younger is a really good idea because our kiddos who move up and move up and move up with all these skills, not developing these foundational regulation skills, they start to think, once I get started, I can't stop because then I'll never come back. And so they're not taking their breaks and they're trying to power through and they're getting exhausted and they're not giving 100% and then they're getting frustrated. So I think if you can, when you're trying to look at homework in the younger grades, start instilling, look, we're going to do 10 or 15 minutes. We're not going away for an hour. We're not going to go watch,
Yeah.
Bluey
Maybe
or
set a
something.
timer or something. Yeah.
Right? Like literally just go fluff your dog or do a jumping jack or turn in a circle and then come right back, kind of refresh your brain. And you were in the classroom, right? Quick brain break. Just give them a little something to shake it up and come back. So I think the movement is important. And then I think being cognizant of how we are interacting and verbalizing homework needs to get done to our kids. That declarative language, I think I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Noticing things, being curious about something versus saying, let's get this done. So instead of go do your math, say, hey, I think you had some math homework today, or I noticed that this is sitting over there. Is that something you want to be working on? And that in turn gives them the ability to start thinking, I do have something to do. And that's the initiation we want later down the road, that self-monitoring.
Yeah. I love that because I've seen it before with just like household stuff. Like it's called the like notice and do method.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're always telling our kids, oh, go pick up your socks on the floor, go pick up your water bottle here, go pick up this, go pick up that, like they're really not learning the skills to, okay, let me just scan the room real quick and see what I need to pick up. And so I started implementing that a while back. And sometimes I'm still like, oh my gosh, there's socks on the floor still, and they know that socks are just going to set me off because there's socks everywhere. Um, but I can say, okay, oh nope, let's notice and do, let's notice and do. And my daughter will come down. She's like, Mom, I'm really not noticing. And if she really isn't, looking at it. But if I tell her, I'm like, okay, well, you're hot, you're cold, go go this way, go that way, that little bit of guidance. And I feel like it's important to teach her to be more responsible for her stuff. And I never thought about really relating that, like with their schoolwork too, and their homework. Um, and say, okay, let's look at our planners. Because even in first grade, my son has a planner now. And I don't necessarily trust everything he writes down because we're still working on, reading and spelling and writing down our numbers correctly and, those kinds of things. But it's instilling in him like, okay, let me look at what I have to do. Let me make sure I've done it all. And of course, there's more reminders with him than it is with my daughter. But I like that concept of like the notice and do for your homework as well, and making sure because then they'll leave it on the counter. I'm like, oh nope, we got it. That's the last step. I know you want to run away right now because you're done, but the last step is making sure that folder gets back in your backpack. Those kinds of things. So I love that.
And it really it leads them to doing that in the classroom as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they missed a direction or they were still processing the last thing, the teacher's still talking, being able to notice what their peers are doing, right? To
Yeah.
kind of pause and be like, ooh, I missed something, but I can tell. I can tell by the time in the class that must be time to do this, or I can tell because everyone else is over there. So
Yeah.
it is a skill that can be taught. And that's, the main underlying reason that there's
And it just
coaches
takes
like me out there.
practice and
Yeah.
reminders. But it's using context clues, even with reading. My daughter was reading something last night and she couldn't figure out what it was trying to ask her. I'm like, okay, well, here's our deep thinking, critical questions that, everything's not just going to be handed to you and told what to do exactly. Like, we want our kids to be able to notice things and figure it out for themselves. And we're just here to help guide them through that, which is the tricky part. But, we'll get there. So, we're going to dive into a couple of book recommendations to spark those conversations with your kids around attention and focus challenges. So, I have three picture books I was going to mention. I really like they help explain and normalize these types of feelings for kids. The first one is called The Rocket Inside Me by Karelle Vezina. The second one is My Brain Needs Glasses by Annick Vincent. And the third is Benji's Busy Brain by Erin Schoenfelder Gonzalez. So I'll have all of these linked in the show notes and on our website. But I love when kids can see their own traits in the characters, and it helps them feel more understood, and it even helps the parents, understand what it's like for them as well. So I thought those three were great. And also for the older kiddos, there's a book called ADHD is Awesome by Penn and Kim Holderness. And it's a more middle grade, but it really tears down that stigma and embarrassment, that might surround having a quote unquote diagnosis or, what it really, it's just a way to learn about how your brain works, what's best for it, and how we can, best support it. So do you have any books that you would like to share as well?
I do. I think that was a great selection that you started with. And I like that you gave two different age groups because I usually like to recommend books for families that kind of grow with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to throw two in. Like I told you earlier, I'm not good at narrowing things down all
That's
the
fine. The
time,
more the
but
merrier on this
I
podcast.
think when kids are really little is when you can really start instilling some of this. People ask all the time, well, when can we start? You can start right away. So one of my all-time favorite little kid books is Blue Hat, Green Hat by Sandra Boynton, only because it's the first book that my own two kids learned to read.
Aw.
Um, but it's also known as the oops book, right? So they've got the shirt on upside down or the pants are on their head, all kinds of silly oopses. And what better place to notice that failing is okay is
Yeah.
in a fun, loving way on mama's lap. So I think that book and what is it by Mo Willems? Waiting is not easy. Um, Great way to talk about how hard it is to have patience and staying power for focus. I think I'm not going to let go knocking the phones. We all know the impact it's having.
Yeah.
But
There's
when
an
you're
episode on
waiting
that.
in
Yeah.
line somewhere, here's your phone. So
Hmm.
not only is our little one like zoned in on a super cool, fun show, they're missing the world around them and they're not having to wait or be bored. So those would be my like little kid. Let's get started instilling some of these skills. And I'm not as good about having the authors. I'll get them for you. But another younger kid one, more elementary school, that I like is My Brain is a Race Car. And it's kind of fun and visual and gives the whole process of how their brain is really working and they can relate. A middle school and high school book that I like, and I just recently was introduced to it. It's called the Mini ADHD Coach, and it's a small little book, and it's just got tools to support trying out new strategies. And
Yeah.
it basically is, it's just a fun presentation. It's not paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. It's little snippets here and there. So it's great strategies to try. And the author just said, this is what worked for me throughout the whole book. So I think for that middle school and high school group, it's low key, low pressure. Here's some ideas.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that.
and then for parents, it's hard to pick one. If you're in the heat of like school is a mess and I need help and I've got to give my kids some concrete tools, like, oh, how do I get through these stages? I think the Peg Dawson Smart But Scattered series is phenomenal. But if you're not quite to that panic point yet, I think Dana Abraham's Calm the Chaos is just a beautiful book. I think she has a lot to share on connecting with your kid,
Yeah.
and that's a big part of the basis of all of what we've talked about today.
And I feel like you mentioned, like it is a lot of it is genetics. And even with the adults, like I hear so many people as adults be like, yeah, I didn't realize I had this until after college or into adulthood. Um, and then it's so I think it's acknowledging that now for not only what it might feel like for us as parents trying to help our child, but also maybe as parents that have those same tendencies that helps you understand yourself and then in turn, help your child as well. And that's the one thing that I love about books is that there's stories and there's strategies and there's tools there, but it also just helps kids and parents alike say, okay, well, obviously this is, a big enough thing that other people struggle with that people have written books about it. Like I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that feels this way. This isn't just
Exactly.
my brain not working or me being lazy. Like there's a whole plethora of books and authors and kids and parents out there that are going through similar struggles. And I think just that alone helps a lot of, kids and how they approach it and, the self-esteem that they have about themselves too.
Absolutely. I agree.
So I'd also just like to shout out a couple of podcasts that I love for all the things. But I know they have episodes on ADD and ADHD in particular as well. The first is the functional medicine based show from Dr. Mark Hyman. So we were talking about like really setting those foundations. He talks about the importance of, protein versus, starchy sugars and the effects that it has on the brain, chemistry and things like that. And the other is from a brain psychologist, Dr. Amen. His podcast is called Change Your Brain Every Day. And he really breaks down how to support and nurture your brain health overall. So you have your childhood all the way into late adulthood, things like dementia and Alzheimer's to ADHD to all the things in between. They have a ton of episodes that are really useful. So if you want to dive into that, I will link those as well in the show notes. Okay, so before you go, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your coaching practice? It's called E-Function Academy, emphasis on the fun, the FUN, right?
Yes. Let's say I hope so. Yes. So absolutely. I have been here in Texas for a little over a year and a half. And when I moved, it was a great time for me to see what the final chapter of my career was going to be. Like you mentioned earlier, as a speech language pathologist and then a preschool director and educator. And there were just some kiddos, a lot of kiddos kind of falling through my sieve in both careers.
Yeah.
And this seemed like the perfect opportunity to catch my Matthew and my Aiden and my Cora and these kiddos that will be on my heart forever. So they're kind of my why. And I thought, how can I do this? And that's where eFunction Academy was born. And so what I do is I work right now one-on-one with students to help them with their pain points. And again, it's mostly middle school and high school kids because that's when parents start to realize that filling in for their prefrontal cortex is getting overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
and having a greater impact both at school and at home. And we start with a evaluation of their skills and we work from their strengths. A lot of times in schools, we're looking for what the deficits are and how do we improve them. And unfortunately, that's not really how to make improvements. You
Yeah.
have to like go with what you've got and you're good at and use that to build. So it takes some time getting to know these kiddos and letting them see their own strengths. You know, we have a negative bias in our brain, and we're always really great at talking about what our barriers are and what we're no good at.
That's
And
true.
trying to help these kids identify what their strengths are so that we can find a system that works with their brain. And so a lot of the work is learning how to use a planner, learning how to organize, how to prioritize those weighted assignments. Right now, I do have an office that I'd love to see kids in, but I do offer a more concierge kind of service where I go into the homes and work with students as well. And
Awesome.
there's benefits to both types of service, and I'm enjoying them both.
Especially, I would imagine like being able to go into their homes too, maybe not every session, but for at least some sessions, seeing what they're working with at home, and like you could say some of
Absolutely.
those environmental distractions or, ways that we could make our habits go help a little bit more smoothly than that. But so you
Absolutely.
do that primarily, that's after school or like on the weekends, right?
It is.
Not during school
I
hours.
work.
Yeah.
No, and I am hoping I'm just, again, a little bit new here. So I'm finally starting to make connections in the schools. And I am hoping to be able to support some of my students, maybe in their study halls. I find a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
times it's a huge complaint that they're not making use of this time. So it might be a way that I could support kiddos virtually. I haven't quite figured out how the best way to
Yeah,
do that is
that's a great idea, actually.
because a lot of our babes they're super overscheduled and coming to me after school when they're fried is not ideal.
Yeah.
It's
Especially
not
if they doing
perfect.
anything else, extracurriculars.
Yeah, it's a lot and it's not the best time, but it's a good time to get them started. And my service delivery will probably change as
Hmm.
I grow and as I watch my students grow. Um, I think I'd like to be seeing kids 3 and 4 times a week for shorter periods of time,
Yeah.
um, just to help with that overall task initiation. It's a really difficult piece for kids whose brains are set up a little bit differently than the systems they're working in.
Yeah. That's really exciting though, because I feel like it is so helpful to some, even if it's, the gap between, school ends and they have a practice that starts in an hour, if they can hop on and kind of get themselves organized with
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
it really sets the tone for the rest of their day, their week, and, it all snowballs from there. So that's exciting though.
absolutely.
So where can they follow you on your socials? You post a lot of good info and resources on there as well. So, or if they want to reach out for a consult, what's the best way?
So they can follow me on Facebook under eFunction Academy. That is where I'm learning a little bit about social media posting. I also do have an Instagram and a LinkedIn, but I'll be honest, that is a learning curve for me in the business world is the social media posts. But please feel free to hook onto my website, efcoach.org. There is a request for a consultation, or they can just reach out and email me directly at robyn@efcoach.org.
Great.
And if they're phone call people, which there's not too many of those left around,
I am guilty of
um,
that. If I can, I will text and email the day away. But if I have to, like, someone calls me, I'm like, oh, what do I do?
yes, absolutely. I did get a call the other day. I was like, oh my goodness. But that's just 888 EF Coach.
Okay,
So
cool.
I'd be glad to take a phone call as well. And,
We
I think
will, yeah, link all that on the website
fantastic.
in the show notes. Okay, so I know this will be such a helpful episode to the many parents out there. Robyn, thank you so much for joining. I feel like we need part 2 in the works. So you let me know what you want to talk about next, and we'll get to that on another season and continue this. But friends, that's it for this week's episode. And I hope you've gained a couple of smart nuggets on how to identify and help your child or yourself with attention and focus challenges. And we'll see you guys next time on the Blooming Books podcast. Robyn, thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's cheers, more cheers. That's the heart of building our executive function skills. We got this. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Love that. Thank you for listening to the Blooming Books podcast, recorded and produced by Blooming Rose Kids. We've opted to keep our series ad-free, and if you'd like to support our efforts, please consider shopping our own custom-signed Blooming Rose books at bloomingrosekids.com and our academic materials on our Teachers Pay Teachers page. All of the books mentioned in this episode are also available via our affiliate links in the show notes. We so appreciate you being here and hope to see you next time.